Now that we have good background understanding of SAP, let's shift our focus to ABAP. So I'll start with an introduction to this ABAP Editor tool. In the previous session, we understood that there are different workbench tools that we use to develop applications in SAP. The most frequently used tool is ABAP Editor. Most of the times, more than 90% of the times when you're developing an application in SAP, you'll end up using ABAP Editor. ABAP Editor is the main tool that we use to write our ABAP programs. So before we discuss about the syntax and all the stuff, let's understand this ABAP Editor, how you create a program using this ABAP Editor. The transaction code to access ABAP Editor is SC38. Every time I open any transaction in this course, you can notice that transaction code at the bottom of the screen here. So even if I forget to mention the transaction code, you can just look at the bottom of my screen and you should be able to see the transaction code that I'm opening. So using ABAP Editor, we can create programs. There are different types of programs that you can create in ABAP. I won't be going into the details of that. We'll explore different types of programs as we move along in this course. Initially, we'll be creating a program which is called an executable type of program. So initially, all the programs that we'll create will be executable type of programs. To create a program in ABAP Editor, open this transaction SC38 and on the initial screen, you'll see a field to enter the program name. So you can, using this tool, you can look at existing programs, you can open any existing program or you can create new programs as well. Since programs are repository objects, we should use it should be in a customer namespace. So the program name should start with either Z or Y. So we'll use Z. We'll start all our programs with this using Z instead of Y. But you can use either Z or Y. In companies, generally we use Z. Y is reserved for creating test programs. Give some name for your program, any meaningful name so that you can identify what type of program you are creating by looking at the program name. So I'll say, let's say, example program. So give the name of the program. And here you have sub objects. You can select different radio buttons to maintain different things about the program. One is the source code. So it will open the editor where you can write your code. Other is variants. Whenever you're running an executable program, you can pass certain variants to it. So when we talk about selection screens and stuff later in the course, we'll understand these variants. And similarly, there are certain attributes which you can set. So if you want to just edit the attributes of the program, you can select this radio button. And if you want to maintain some documentation, you can select this radio button. So these sub-objects are basically a way to directly access that particular object of a program so that you can go and edit or change it. So we'll keep it to source code. But text elements are again a certain type of data objects where you can maintain certain static text. So again, we'll discuss about them as we move along. So when we talk about messages, I'll give you an introduction to these text elements also. Select the source code radio button for now and click on this create button. If you want to display an existing program, give the program name and click on the display button. If you want to change the existing program, click on this change button. But now we want to create a new program. So I'll give my program name. The only criteria is the name should start with Z and your user account should have developer key assigned. So give the program name, click on this create button. So it will open this dialog box where you can maintain certain attributes for your program. One is title. So this is the mandatory attribute. So you give some meaningful title. And you can select the type of program. So as I said, there are different types of programs we can create, but initially we'll restrict ourselves to these executable programs. And as we explore more about ABAP, we'll explore the other types of programs. So select the type of program as executable. Then all the other options are optional. They are not mandatory. Only the title and the type of program are mandatory fields. So if you don't want to maintain anything else, you can just click on save and continue. Or else you can maintain other stuff. For example, status, you can maintain whether it's a standard SAP program. For example, if SAP is developing a program, a standard SAP program, then they'll maintain the status as standard SAP program. if we are developing a program and you plan to use this in production later, so you're developing it in the development system, but later on you'll be moving it to the production system, then we say customer production program. And if you're just creating one system program, let's say for a basis a module, then we select the system program. And if it is just a test program, then select test program. Again, these options does not influence how the program behaves. Okay, so you can give select anything. These are for documentation purpose only. And application area, also you can assign an application area based on for which application area you are creating, or which module. Let's say I'm creating it for finance, so I'll say finance. And authorization group allows you to restrict the program in the sense who can execute this program. So if you want only certain people in your organization should have access to this program or to run this program, then the basis consultant will set up an authorization group, and when you're creating this program, you assign the authorization group to your program, and whichever user ID has that authorization group assigned, only those people will be able to execute this program. If anybody else tries to execute this program, then the system will throw an error saying that that person is not authorized to run this program. So if you want to maintain that, you maintain it here. And there's something called logical databases. It's a concept basically where you can join different database tables, related database tables. We no more use this at the attribute level. SAP provides a function module, so you can use that function module if you want to access the logical databases, but it's kind of old concept. We no more use it much. So, but if you want to assign a logical database, you can give it here. And each logical database can also have something called a selection screen. So if you want to have a specific selection screen to be used for a logical database, then you assign it here. Then editor log, if you select this checkbox, then only you, the person who's creating this program, can edit this program. If somebody else tries to edit this program, then it will not allow them to edit it. We don't check this normally, because whenever you are developing a program, it may be you who's developing this program, but later on somebody else might maintain this program. So 1 year down the line, when the user wants some changes to the program, it may not be you who will be making those changes. It could be somebody else. So we generally don't select this editor log. But if you are using a common system and you're afraid others might edit your programs or test programs that you're creating for practice, you can use this option. And Unicode check active. When you select this, if you try to write any code that is not Unicode compatible, then the system will give a warning message. Fixed point arithmetic allows, if you're performing any calculations in your program, then it will allow you to make those calculations with decimal places. Otherwise, it will round off to the nearest whole number. So if you want your calculations in the program to have decimal values, then select this fixed point arithmetic and start using a variant. Each program can have something called a selection screen where the user can input selection criteria. And if you want to execute this program with a default selection criteria, then we create something called a variant, and we can assign a variant. If you want to, whenever you execute, if you want to execute this with a default variant, you can select this checkbox. But generally we don't do this. So just leave everything as it is. Just maintain the program name and the program type, which will be executable program for now, and click on this save button. Then it will show a dialog box which is asking you to enter the package. So as I said, repository objects are always saved in packages. They are organized in packages so that it will be easy to identify all the development objects that are done for a particular module or for a particular project. So when you're doing this in your organization, generally they will tell you which package you should use for your development objects. So you enter those package here. For all the local developments that we do, for test programs that we create, we are not planning to transport them to any other system. So we use something called a local package. So there's a default package available in the system called $tmp. So I can either enter $tmp as a package and click on save, or else you can simply click on this local object. So this will be saved as a local object which is non-transportable. Otherwise, I can enter a package and then create something called a transport request and keep my object in that transport request. And using which it will allow us to transport this object to a different system. So for example, I can develop in the development system and transport it to a quality system for testing, and once everything is fine, we can again transport it to a production system for the end users to use it. So we can keep it either in a transportable package or use this local object, which is a non-transportable package. For now, we'll use local objects. At a later stage, we'll try to understand this packages concept about transportable packages and how you create your transport request and all this stuff. Click on this local object or simply enter $tmp as a package and click on save. You can do any of that. So this is your ABAP editor. If you don't see your editor like this with these line numbers, and if your editor looks different, then you can go to Utilities, Settings, and make sure this front-end editor new is selected. Sometimes this old editor may be selected. If you are using SAP GUI for Java, if you are using it on a Mac system, then you don't have this new editor. It will be having only the old editor. So that's why I recommended that you use Windows, SAP GUI for Windows. So the old editor looks like this, without the line numbers, without the keyword suggestions. So it may be a bit uncomfortable. But if you're using SAP GUI for Windows and using a Windows PC, then if you see that old editor, you can go to Utilities, Settings, make sure this ABAP Editor tab is selected, and in the first Editor tab, select this front-end editor new. So it will open this new editor. One advantage with the new editor is you have the line numbers, and second advantage is whenever I'm typing a keyword, it will automatically show me that suggestion. So I can press the tab key on my keyboard to take that suggestion. So it will help you. Initially, if you don't remember the exact keyword, you can just start typing and it will prompt you the suggestions accordingly. And while you are at the editor, if you check the right hand bottom corner, there's a small icon here. If you click on this icon and go to this code completion, make sure this option is selected, suggest non-keywords from the text. Select this option and click save. What this will do is, if I have some variable or anything declared, for example, if I have something like this, then next time I want to use that variable, when I'm typing the variable name, it will suggest the variable name also in the suggestion. So I don't have to remember the names of these variables. As I keep typing, I'll get suggestions. So you don't have to type everything manually. If you don't select that option, then you won't get suggestions for the variables. You'll only get suggestions for the keywords. Okay, so these two settings you can do. And there is also something called Pretty Printer. For example, I can type the keyword in lowercase or uppercase, it doesn't matter. But while I'm reading the code, it may not be very user friendly for me to read the code. So what we can do is, if I go to Utilities Settings again, there is a tab called Pretty Printer. Here you can select this indent, uppercase checkboxes, and select this keyword uppercase. So it will do indentation and all these things. For example, if I type something like this, and if I do Pretty Printer, if I click on this Pretty Printer button, it will automatically format my code to make it more legible. So once you write the code, just use the Pretty Printer to format your code better so that it's more easy to read. Okay, so these few settings you can do once you open your editor. You just have to do them once, the first time you use it. You don't have to do it every time. So these are the settings you can do. And for each program, whenever you create a program, there are two things you can do to save the program. One is clicking on the save button. This will save your program. And second is activating the program. So there's a difference between saving a program and activating a program. In SAP, any object can have two states. One is an active state, the other is an inactive state. Okay, for example, this program is already developed. Let's say I'm activating this program now. So now the program status is active. Whenever somebody executes this program, it will always execute the active version of the program. So in the active version, let's say there are a couple of lines of code. So if I'm executing this program, it will execute these lines of code. Now, as a developer, I'm still editing this program. So let's say I'll write few more lines. Okay. Now I've written one more line and click on save. Now the status is inactive, but the system has already saved an active version of this program previously. Now there's one more version which is saved in the database, which is an inactive version. Let me show you that. As I said, everything in SAP is stored in the database table. So even when you create your ABAP programs, the source code is saved in the database table. So when you execute a program, the system will actually pick up the source code of this program that is saved in the database, and then it will run that program. Yeah, this is the programs table where the report source code is stored. So here if you see, my program is having two entries here. One is an active entry and one other is an inactive entry. So this active version will have whatever source code was there when I activated the program, and after that whatever changes I made and simply saved will be saved in this inactive version. So when somebody else executes my program, it will only load the active version. So it will not execute these new lines of code that I'm still writing. Okay. So if somebody else is running this program, it will load, the system will always load the active version into the application server and run the program there. This new code I'm writing will not be executed. But once I finish my code and if I click on activate again, then it will delete that inactive version. Now if I refresh this table, you see there's only one version saved, which is the active version, right? So that inactive version is deleted now. So now if somebody executes, it will execute all these three lines of code that you see. So like that, for every object, we have this active version and inactive version. Every time before you execute your program, make sure you activate it. It's not just program anything. So for example, let's say I want to maintain some text for this program. Let's say something called a text symbol. Once I maintain it, again here I have two options. I can either save it or activate it. If I simply save it, then the system will save this in the database so that you can, next time you open, you can still edit it. But when I'm running the program, it won't use these text elements I'm saving or I maintained it here. Because for the system to use it, they should be existing in an active status. Once you maintain the text symbols, you can activate it. Anywhere you see this active button, make sure you use the active button to activate it. There are few scenarios where you may not see an active button, you may just see a save button. So in that case, simply save it, that should be fine. But if you see an activate button, then make sure you activate it before executing your program. Because this happens where students see me showing them how to maintain text elements and how to create, how to use them in the program. So they simply maintain, save it, don't activate it, and then complain that the system is not using the text elements they have saved. Even though they have maintained it in the program, they are not able to use them. That's because they forget to activate it. Okay, so anywhere you see, if you are confused between saving and activating, if you see the save button and activate button on the same screen, make sure you click the activate button. Okay. Saving should be used only if you want to temporarily save your work and come back and finish it later. But if you are done with the work, make sure you activate it. Okay. So this is your ABAP editor. There are few buttons that you can see in the application toolbar for your editor. I'll just walk you through these buttons. This back and forward navigation. So if you have gone somewhere and you want to go back in the source code, you can use this back and forward navigation buttons. If you want to toggle between display and change mode, you can use this. For example, right now I'm in change mode. I can click on this to go back to display mode. Again, I can click on this to change mode. So you can toggle between display and change modes. And these buttons we don't use. So if you want to see the active and inactive versions of your program, you can click on this button. If you want to open another object, for example, I've opened this ABAP editor and I want to open another object, I can click on that and give that object, for example, another program name, and click on OK. It will open that program. And this we use for enhancements, which we'll discuss later. This button that you see here, check button, Control F2 key, shortcut key. This will do a syntax check. So when you click on this, the system will perform a syntax check and it will tell you if you have any syntactical errors in your code. For example, if I forget this period here and do a syntax check, it will tell me that a period is missing at the last statement. So you can see the row number is 15, that means the line number 15, and it is an error, syntax error. If you get a warning or informative messages in the syntax check, you can ignore them. But if you get an error message in this red color, that means you have to correct that error. So once I correct the syntax error, if I do the syntax check again, it will say syntactically correct. Okay. And this is the activate button. So once you're done with your code, click on this activate button. The next button that you see is your execute button. So if you want to execute this program, click on this execute button. If I do that, nothing will happen because I haven't written any code that will perform some actions. So this is the execute button. So after you write the code, you want to execute your program and see, for example, let's say I write one statement. And I'll activate it and then I'll execute it. So always make sure you first activate it and then execute it. So when I execute it, it will run the program and it's showing this on the output screen. And this is a where use list. For example, you want to see where this program is used in other objects. Sometimes you can call one program from another program. So any object in SAP, if you want to see where it is used. So what this will help us is, if this program is used at different places, generally for programs it really doesn't make much sense, but it makes more sense for ABAP dictionary objects. For example, if you have created a table and you want to see where in which other objects is this table used, you can perform this where use list action and it will list all the objects where this particular table is used, so that if you're changing something in the table, then you'll know what are the other programs that will be affected by your change. So to analyze the dependencies, we use this where use list. Okay. And this will open this program in Object Navigator. So if you want to switch to Object Navigator, click on this and it will load this program in Object Navigator. So here you can see the program is open in Object Navigator, and as I said in the previous session, Object Navigator is the integrated development environment where from one place you can perform a lot of things. So I can create screens, menus, all these things for my program. But when we are just creating the program without any screen or menu, all these things, then it really doesn't matter whether you're using the ABAP Editor directly or the Object Navigator. Okay. So, and this navigation window will only show the different, like if you have navigated too much in the program back and forth using this back forward buttons, then you can see the list whole navigation sequence here. And this is a help button. We don't use all these buttons, but if I want to search for any keyword, help, documentation and all, I can use that button. And these are the breakpoint buttons. I'll talk about them in the coming sessions when we discuss about debugging. And pattern button is used if you want to load, call a function module or class or anything like that. We can use this pattern button. So it will simply fill up the code for you. So instead of you manually typing the code to make the call to a function module, for example, you can simply give the function module name and it will list all the parameters of the function module so that it will be easy for you to map your fields. So otherwise you have to check the function module, identify the parameters, and then manually write them in your code. So it just saves you time. So like that you can write, insert different statements, call function, calling your classes, message statements, select statements, like that. So we typically use this pattern button for calling function modules and methods. So that's your pattern button. Okay, so these are the few application toolbar buttons that you can use. If you want to search within the code, you can also use this find button and find next button. Okay, and these are your cancel, back, and exit buttons. So this is your ABAP editor. I won't be talking about all the tools at once. As I said, as we keep moving forward in this course, I'll be introducing these tools. Before I use any tool for the first time, I'll be explaining you something about the tool, different options that you find in the tool, and what is their purpose, so that it will be easy for you to understand. We'll be using this ABAP editor. Initially, we'll be using this ABAP editor and ABAP dictionary, two tools to do our exercises. In the next video, we'll understand ABAP syntax. So we'll use the ABAP editor to write some code, and in that process, understand various syntax rules that you should follow when writing ABAP code. See you in the next session.